Julianne, and good afternoon, everybody. You're in for a treat today. And that is one of the pleasures of participating in ILR programs is the opportunity to hear veritable experts on fascinating areas. When you hear highlights from Allison Connor's academic and life experience, you'll agree. Allison is a UF graduate who earned her PhD in Chinese and Southeastern Asian history at Cornell University and her law degree at Harvard Law School, where she specialized in Asian and comparative law and was a research fellow in the East Asian Legal Studies program. Following law school, she taught Chinese and East Asian history and then spent 5 years practicing law on Wall Street before moving to Asia in 1983. During the 1983-84 academic year, she taught as a senior Fulbright professor at Nanjing University's Department of Law as one of the first Fulbright groups to return to China after 1949. From 1984 to 86, she taught law at the National University of Singapore, and in 1986 to 1995, she taught both Hong Kong and Chinese law at the University of Hong Kong's faculty. Where she taught until she retired until in 2020. During her time in Hawaii, I missed a sentence here. In 1995, my goodness. She joined the University of Hawaii Law School, where she taught until she retired in 2020. Professor Connor has written on modern Chinese law and Chinese legal history, especially in areas relating to the legal profession and legal education. But she also maintains her broader interests in Asian history, art, and cinema. Much of her recent research is focused on the depiction of law and the legal system in Chinese movies, especially the pre-1949 films, which she loved when she first saw them in Hong Kong in the mid-1980s. So her topic today is movie justice, law in early Chinese film.
Let's see now. Let me adjust this. If this isn't right, y'all please let me know in case I say something important. But I definitely want people to, I usually work without a mic, but I'd like everyone to hear me when I talk about these wonderful movies. This, by the way, is an actual Shanghai film theater during the 1930s. It's still there, and I've seen movies in it. And early Chinese film, I should clarify, by early Chinese film, I mean movies made before October 1, 1949, when the PRC was established by the Chinese Communist Party. So these are mostly, the best films are made in the 30s and 40s. During this time, that was the Republic of China. The first movie was made in 1905. We don't have this movie. The earliest is 1922. But usually the 1930s films are considered the first golden age of Chinese movies. And there's some wonderful films made then. The second golden age is the post-war 1940s. That was during a civil war, and yet in Shanghai, they were still making movies and making some really great movies at the time. So I have a film, I want to discuss one film from the 1930s, one of my favorites, and the second film comes from the late 1940s. They're very, very different movies. I think they're both good. If y'all are interested, I will make sure that y'all have the link to a website that will show you a number of them, and you can call them up and just take a look. It used to be very, very hard to see them, but now there's some very good ones available with excellent subtitles, so everybody can access these terrific movies.
Send that to me, I can send it out to the group.
Okay, great. And it's they've got about 30 up there now, I think. Oh, I'm going backwards. What? maybe this will be a better talk if I go forward. Here we go. Now, at the same time that early movies were being made, pioneering movies, this is the period of the Republic of China on the mainland. Republic of China is now in Taiwan. And they introduced during these years a modern legal system and modern legal codes, influenced by the European, not by us. And they introduced some major, really revolutionary legal reforms. In criminal procedure, for example, they banned torture, which was a device used in traditional trials. They also, as of 1912, recognized lawyers as a profession for the first time. Before that, anybody who had legal expertise or tried to get involved in cases was considered a litigation trickster, and the government really hated them, or a litigation stick. Government hated them, banned them, and punished them. So you don't have recognized lawyers before 1912. That's a major change. They also want another major change, really revolutionary, is that in the 1931 Civil Code, for the first time, women could initiate a divorce. For the first time, women either go to court if you had grounds and it was opposed, or you could, if it was consensual, you could have a document drafted to sign and get a divorce, but the wife could initiate it. Traditionally, that was not possible. So these are really revolutionary changes. And the interest part of it for me is you start to see almost right away, you start to see legal issues showing up in the movies in Shanghai. Now, I should say, Shanghai was the center of movie making. Shanghai was the center of Chinese film during these years. It also was one of the most developed areas for a legal system, because it's one thing to say you will have modern courts. It's another thing to staff them, to produce lawyers, to train legal people, and to have everything in place. But Shanghai, so many cities were still with traditional courts, but Shanghai had modern courts and it had modern lawyers. The largest bar association in China was in Shanghai, and some very well-known lawyers were there. Now, why does it matter? We start to see in the movies almost immediately, we start to see various legal issues or legal topics. I mean, really, who cares? This is long before Law and Film. And of course, we know that in all American movies, there are always legal issues. There are always lawyers, but that was not true. So to see them in China then is really, I think, very impressive. So why would we care generally? The first reason is if you're a legal historian, in these movies, you can see right away depictions of the legal system and the characters who play in it, lawyers. You can see trials. Right away, you see them. They're not documentaries. So you're looking at popular depictions, some of which are very accurate of this. Right away, they're in film. You're in the city of film and the city of law, really. So that's one reason. We have a sense of what's happening. The second reason is for film people who may or may not agree. And that is, my view is, if you want to understand the message or the narrative of the film, even the narrative, I think you have to understand, in many cases, the legal aspects that they are depicting. Now, I talk to film people who feel, oh, no, it doesn't matter. But actually, of course, if you're a lawyer, it does matter. If you want to interpret the film, I think you need to understand what they're telling you. So those are two reasons we might do it. But we don't need those reasons to watch some of these movies. They're great. I'm going to talk about two, as I said, both among my favorites. One is from the 30s and focuses on, we're going to see a trial in that one, and lawyers. The second one is from the 40s, and we're going to see a divorce proceeding. So we will be able to see that. Now, part of in watching this, I also hoped that I would see lawyers. And we might see, yeah, who hopes that really? Okay, so I do. Now, we might see in these movies, we might see lawyers. I would always look for lawyers. And I did find some. Now I'm looking for good lawyers. I'll show you a couple I found before I was really focusing on this. Here's one of them. Oh, what a sleaze bag. There is a litigation trickster if there ever was one, this lawyer. He's a Shanghai lawyer. Um, this one is worse. He looks like Hitler. Both of these lawyers are doing things that are highly unethical and certainly not treating their clients right. So I was looking for better lawyers. And I think in these two movies, we may have found them. Now, here's my first movie, Goddess. Um, this is a wonderful movie. This is a great movie. I first saw this in 1986 in Hong Kong in a short series of pre-49 movies that the National Film Archives in Beijing had allowed to be sent to Hong Kong. You couldn't just see them. So I went to see them. It was shown in an old movie theater, very atmospheric, where at the time, in the older movie theaters, by the way, you could bring your own snacks. So you could be, they didn't have any restrictions. And you could be watching great films while people chewed on chicken bones right next to you. But they were watching the movies too. It's more enjoyable if you have something to eat. Well, this film was directed by Wu Yonggang, who I think was a great director. He made later films. He knew Hollywood very well, like many of the directors. But he was very good, despite, of course, they're working with long outdated equipment. He knew how to tell a story, and he could really break your heart. And he does it in this film. Goddess is actually slang for a prostitute. And that's the main character. It's 1930s Shanghai slang. And that's why it has this title. The main character is a young woman who is trying to raise her son. And I have to say, you see him at different ages. Played by three of the cutest child actors I have ever seen. It's amazing. They're wonderful. Now, her whole life, is devoted. She wants to see him educated. That is her dream. She wants to raise him and see him educated. She has no education. And here she is with one of them. Now, she leaves him at night because she has to go out and work. And here we see her working. She's harassed by the police who know what her profession is. And by the way, he's eyeing her. I have to point out her dress. This is 1930s Shanghai Art Deco. What a fabulous dress. Oh, I love it. This is, for one of my friends, this is one of her favorite dresses ever. So she is out at night. Now, one night, usually no incident, but one night while she's out, there is a raid. The police are after, they're going to pick everybody up. And she runs into a building and then through an open door, a door that's not locked. So she's going to hide briefly from the police. But unfortunately, the door she's gone through is the home, or I should say the lair of this creature who is a gangster. And look at him. He can't believe his good luck. She stepped into his apartment. And we can tell, we see she's trapped. She's trapped. He's got her in his clutches. He's a greedy gangster, and he's going to take all her money directly. So here she is. She knows she can't go to the police. What can she do? Now, she's still, despite this, she is still focusing on how to get her son educated. She has him in a good school, but the problem is the other mothers have figured out what she does for a living, and they've seen the gangster, and they want her out, and they want her son out. Now, here she is talking to the principal of the school, who understands the desire for education and is trying to help her. Now, while she's working, she is hiding away money. She is not giving all her money to the gangster. And she's going to use that to take her son and get away and start over and put him in a new school. So she's hiding and putting that money away. She's got it hidden. But then one day she discovers that he has found the money. He's found her stash and he's taken every cent. There's nothing left. Now, what's going to happen? She has no money and he knows what she's doing. So how is she going to get away? How is she going to start over with her little boy? That's what she lives for. So he is unresponsive. He's not going to give any back. He doesn't care. And she's distraught. So she picks up a bottle. They're actually in a bar. And she strikes him with it as hard as she can. She's really desperate. And she kills him. In this scene, she kills him. So the next thing we see is that she is on trial. She's being tried for the murder of the gangster. And she is standing here. It's not totally clear. The police are beside her, but she is standing in the dock, which Chinese trials use. This is not set up as where both parties, sit in front. The accused, the defendant, stands in a dock and is guarded. So it's like a wooden cage. You can just see the top of it here. And she's going to be tried. So here we have a trial. Okay, now we have a trial. This is serious. And here are those who will judge her. Now, actually, for a serious trial like homicide, there should be 3 judges. But here, I think Wu Yonggang didn't have a lot of money for sets, and their sets you can see in these early movies, this is made in 1934, are not fancy. So he has 1 judge. The figure in the center is the judge. They all have black robes, and then over that, they have different colored robes. And so that's how you tell. But he is the judge sitting in the center. On the one in the black on the left side of the picture is the clerk. So the clerk is sitting with him. And on the other side, surprise to us, is the prosecutor. The prosecutor is sitting with the judge. And that was, in fact, the way it was done. And it wasn't until 1991 in Taiwan that the prosecutors were moved off the bench and made to sit on the same level as the attorneys. And they didn't like it because they saw it as a demotion, which it was. So here they are sitting there. Actually, at one point when I was talking to some law students and law students in Taiwan, they were amazed to find out, because they started studying long after 1991. They had no idea that the prosecutor had once sat on the bench with the judge or judges. So there they are. And now my point here is that's pretty much accurate. And it's a serious, it's not a fancy scene, but it's a serious, these are serious people who are listening to her case. She has a real judge. These are not horrible looking people, which some of them are shown to be. And even more interesting, she has a lawyer. She has a lawyer. And here he is, he's arguing for her. And he argues for some time. I don't know what he's saying because this is a silent film. So we don't know what he's saying, but he is the lawyer and he's wearing a lawyer's robes and he is arguing for her. Now, as I said, the Shanghai Bar was the largest in China at this time, and many members did pro bono work. So in fact, they showed up and they helped people who were tried. And I think that's why she has them. She could never afford it. But I think he's arguing and he seems to be doing his best. We don't know what his arguments are, but he's making an effort for her. He's not just standing there. Now the judge, at the end of the trial, the judge is standing up. He's going to read the judgment, and the judgment is guilty. 12 years. Her sentence is 12 years, which actually is the sentence she would have got, in fact. But I don't know that any real mitigation was taken into effect. She could have got more, but 12 years, what's going to happen to her? So there they are. And in fact, the judge did stand and read it in practice. Well, now she's in prison. She's facing 12 years in prison. Look at this. Well, I mean, what will happen? But the warden is telling her that the principal who has supported her, tried to help her and her little son, is going to make sure that he is educated. is going to make sure that he's taken care of, because she was the one. Without her, what will happen? So the warden is telling her, he's come to tell her that her son will be all right. And we see, at least for a few moments, we see that is some comfort, because she pictures her son. There's her child. He's going to be educated. He'll never know who his mother was or what she did for a living. And he will be an educated man, her dream. So that's something, she has something to hold on to. But I don't know. What about her? What about her? What a heartbreaker. She's got nothing. She's got 12 years if she lives through it. It's just one of the saddest movies ever. I told you he could break your heart, and he does it in this movie. Now, it's very sad. It really is sad. I saw this when I saw this in Shanghai for the first time. Actually, it was shown 3 times in the series. I saw it every time and took someone back with me each time. For the first one, is still a friend. She was my colleague, and this is still one of her favorite movies. The second one, I regret, because he is a wonderful person. He is my former teacher, and who had grown up in the 30s and 40s. And he was so sad at the end of the movie. I felt he almost cried. I thought, oh, how could I do this to my teacher? But it is really a very sad movie. But when I saw it initially, I was just blown away. I knew it was a work of art. It really is. And a beautiful movie, even though an incredibly sad one. Now, why in this movie, though, let me say why it matters. We know we saw a court scene, and that was a pretty accurate looking scene. If you're going to interpret the movie, the reason that we could see this in Hong Kong then is that the PRC, the Chinese officials, thought it was a leftist movie. They viewed it as a movie that was highly critical of the Republic of China government and its leaders. That's why you could see, and there's some that are amazingly critical. But I don't think it is. I think in this movie, she gets the best of what there is, and it's not a bad system. It's much better than the traditional system. And I can tell you it's a lot better than what was being set up in China. So she actually has the best there is. She has a lawyer. She has a lawyer. Lawyers have only been around since 1912. And I think she got the lowest possible sentence. But the problem is not the overall legal or political system. In my personal view, the problem is the society. It's the people who won't deal with her, who look down on her. It's the fact that she has no recourse, really, if people won't help her. Now, you could still take that and say leftist, bad society, but I think it's very different from true leftist films that show you a terrible system. They show you a good system and a person who's trapped in it and should have better. So that would be my feeling about this, the meaning of this film. Now, my second film, yeah, I'm so sad every time I look at that movie. I have to look at something with humor. And this movie, which was made in the late 1940s by a very good director who worked for Wenhua Film, which was not leftist, kind of middle of the road. It was not a leftist pro-communist party filmmaker. But the screenplay was written by Eileen Zhang. And Eileen Zhang is one of the great Chinese novelists of the 20th century. She also wrote screenplays, and she wrote a couple for movies in China, as well as later in Hong Kong. So she wrote this. It's a well-known director, very good, and one of the most important novelists of the 20th century in China. Long live the missus. And this is kind of a drama comedy. And the important legal issue here is divorce and women being able to initiate a divorce. That's the key legal issue here. Many movies, as I'll note later, show you women getting a divorce. I must have seen 14 or 15 easily. Now here we are, this is opening. These are middle-class people These are middle-class people. They don't live the life of goddess. And what they are exclaiming over here, well, this shows you Sijan, who was a very, very lovely, kind, and smart wife. She is someone who manages everybody. Somehow she manages when things happen, she works around, she manages everything for people. And they may not know it, but it's for their own good. And here, oh, but there is one problem. Her position is not secure because she has not borne a son. She hasn't had a son. And her mother-in-law has noticed that. I think her husband has too. So she may be a valuable member, and she's a very valuable member of this family, but her position is not perfect. Now, right now, she's also wearing a lovely dress, and this, by the way, is in the 40s. I'm giving another style. She has a little handkerchief tucked into, this is where they have frog fasteners, and that was in the fashion. She has a very nice little lace handkerchief, very attractive. I don't think they use them, but show only. She's always beautifully dressed. Now here, they are looking at and apparently exclaiming over what I believe is an electric toaster. And if you take a look, now I would not consider that. I think, as I recall, the husband gave it to her. I don't know. I don't give this high marks for a gift to your wife, but anyway, I mean, it's good to have a toaster. So this, you see, I mean, he's got her a toaster. Now, fortunately, one day, not too long after, it turns out that right outside the lane they live on is a very nice jewelry store. And you can see them stopped here in front of the jewelry store as they're coming out of their apartment. And it happens to have right in the window a brooch that would be amazingly appropriate for a wife. And the husband is not stupid. He buys it. He does. He buys it. So here it is. Nice piece of jewelry. So he buys the brooch for her that she's been looking at for a long time. Not toasters. She has not been looking at toasters. So he buys this, but it's put in a drawer. I don't know, maybe to wear on special occasions, in a drawer. And every time the missus puts things away, she's able to admire the beautiful brooch as well, even though she's not wearing it. But one day she goes and she's putting away their clothes, and she discovers that, oh, sorry, before that, unfortunately, her husband has fallen into the clutches of a greedy mistress. And here he is, they're playing cards. He's playing cards with his mistress and her friend, when he actually should be in his office, but he's playing cards. So he falls into the clutches of, played by a great actress, but really a very greedy mistress. So you'll know what happens. The missus goes to put away their clothes, and she notices that the box where the brooch should be is empty. It's gone. And she guesses what has happened. And her heart is broken because she knows he's given it to somebody. And he's taken away what supposedly was bought for her. This is really tough, very sad. Now, the husband gets tired of the mistress. She really is pretty greedy. And she does have the brooch and demanding. And he'd like to come back to his family. So he does what most people in the family do. He goes to the missus and asks her to help him extricate himself from the clutches of this woman. That's a lot of nerve. But anyway, it's China in the 1940s. And she always saves them. She saves all of them from everything. So she says, you can see how happy she is about this. She says, I will do it if you will grant any request that I make after I succeed. And he agrees immediately. I'll do it. Don't worry. So she is able to help him. She is able to deal with the greedy mistress. She's a lot tougher than she looks. And when he returns, she says, my request is a divorce. I want a divorce. And he doesn't want a divorce. But she says, that is my request, and you promised. So they go to see a lawyer. Now, this is the lawyer's door. It says lawyer Yang Naijun, and that is the lawyer Yang. So they go to see lawyer Yang, and whenever people go to see a lawyer, the films show you his door. They show you, you're seeing a lawyer and what his name is. So this is lawyer Yang. So since the husband has agreed, it's consensual. She doesn't have to go to court and file an action. And what the law allowed you to do, the 1931 Civil Code, was to have a document drawn up. They could write it themselves, but they're not lawyers, and signed by the two parties and witnessed with two witnesses. And that would be sufficient to grant a divorce. Now, later, registration regulations were introduced, so you also had to register the divorce. But at this time, you only had to go have the document, two people witness and agree that you're getting a divorce. So people went to a lawyer. And if you were sitting in a Shanghai movie theater, you thought, how do I get a divorce? Well, this is one way you get a divorce, at least if you're middle class and you know lawyers. So they go to see lawyer. And lawyer Yang, they arrive. Lawyer Yang is their friend. They arrive, and the two young people, one is the younger brother of the wife, and the other is the younger sister of the husband. And they have met because of the family connection. And so they come in, the two couple come in and they say, oh, what are you doing here? And they say, well, we're getting married. What are you doing here? And in fact, you could marry very simply by a declaration in front of two witnesses that you were marrying. But actually, people like this in the middle class had a document, a witness document, so there wouldn't be any question. And the lawyer has drawn it up for them. But his next clients, who happen to be his good friends, want a divorce. They're already married. They want out. So now he's hearing this. Now, in this sequence, I used to show some of it sequenced to my students in other classes who were not studying Chinese law. And the reason is the lawyer, because the lawyer is paying attention to both clients. Here is a lawyer who's paying attention. What do the clients need and want? And he's looking at both of them. He's thinking about it. And these are his friends. These are not just people who walked in off the street. So he is trying to see, but they say they want a divorce. So now he comes back. He has his clerks draw up the documents. Now they're going to sign, and he'll witness. So he has them. Okay, it's the husband's turn to sign. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want the divorce. Should have thought of that earlier, but he doesn't want the divorce. And his wife says, you promised me. So he signs. So the first person signs. Now it's her turn. When she picks up the pen, she bursts into tears. She doesn't want to divorce him. So the lawyer grabs the document and says, he grabs the document from the table and he rips it up and he says, well, y'all can get married, but not by me. You can get divorced, but not by me. I won't do the divorce. I won't do it. He's their friend. So he rips it up and says, I think it would be a good idea if we all went out for a good meal. I'll take everybody out. We'll go out for a meal. And the wife says to the husband, no, you should pay for it because you caused this problem. And I think he does. I think he does pay. I'm not sure. I don't see the bill. But here they are. They go out. It's a very nice Chinese ending to this scene. A happy scene, a happy scene. No divorce. Actually, you notice the husband has a bandage on his forehead. Somehow in between this meal, he has gone back and got the brooch from the mistress and her admirer who's there trying to stop it. But he manages to get the brooch. He just has, a little wound from this battle. So they're all celebrating. It's a great Chinese way, You should always celebrate with a meal like this. And I think they live happily ever after. That's my impression. Now, I'm interested because here is my second lawyer, this one for divorce, and he's my second good lawyer. He is a good lawyer. He's looking to do what the clients want and need. He's their friend. And in fact, he's the lawyer as friend. He's their friend. And if we look at some of the scenes that interest me, what the director is showing you, here is Lawyer Yang and his wife. Lawyer Yang and his wife have come over to see their friends. They're in the apartment. Now, in many of the leftist films and others, you see lawyers or judges high above. The offices are high above everyone. They are above everyone. But here, this is kind of in the middle. If you look out the window, you'll see they're really only part way up. And Lawyer Yang and his wife have come over to see the couple, their friends, to play mahjong. That's what they're doing. They're coming to play mahjong. So when you look out, you see the level at which they are. And in the office, here is Lawyer Yang's office. If you look out the window, you'll see that he also is middle class, middle level. He is approachable. He is on the same level as his clients, his middle class clients. So they show you that. Now, also, I've called him their friend. This lawyer is their friend, and he's not some horrible stranger. Now, here they are. This is the beginning of when they come over to play mahjong. And that's the mother-in-law there. The husband has forgotten he's supposed to be there because they're playing mahjong. But they're showing up, and so they're sitting in the parlor until everybody is there and they can play. So they're sitting in the parlor. Now, if we go to the lawyer's office, he has a very nice reception room in front. And while the documents are being drawn up, the husband and wife are sitting there. They're sitting there in this parlor-like setting. And if we look, we see that this is really a parallel scene. And the couple is completely at home with lawyers. He is their friend, but they are completely at home. They're sitting there as if it were their friend's place, just as he has sat in their apartment. So these are middle class. These are not people who are desperate for a lawyer. They've got a good lawyer who looks out for both of them. So I'm interested in how that's depicted. And I think this is my second good lawyer, both in the divorce area. This is the lawyer as friend. Many years ago, one of my teachers wrote an article, one of my law teachers wrote an article called The Lawyer as Friend. You look out for the client's interests, what the client wants and needs. We're going to worry about other things later. And he is their friend. I should notice now, in all of the pictures, I didn't cut Lawyer Yang's head off anywhere. That's the DVD that cut him off, by the way. I would never cut the lawyer's head off, but that's the DVD. So there he is, Lawyer Yang. He's my second good lawyer, one who does pro bono work in court and one who does the right thing by his clients, exactly, maintains their friendship too. Now, as a final thing, I like this movie. It's got a happy ending. And after some of the sad movies of the 30s, it's a relief. Of course, it's all spoken. Technically, the movies were much better in the late 40s. They're still black and white, but technically, production values, et cetera, they're better. Now, one of the interesting things about the divorce movies is, first of all, it's always the wife who seeks the divorce. Listen, if it's the husband, that's not news. He can divorce anytime he wants. He can do it. But it's always the wife, and it shows people, of course, it's showing you how the law has changed. The wife may initiate it. So that's always the case, not the husband. That's not news. However, in virtually every film, I think I have 12 or 14 or so divorce films, the wife changes her mind or the divorce is undone. And the reason, of course, is having the wife initiate the divorce and say, I want to be free, offends traditional morality. So on the one hand, the movie makers, filmmakers can show you the new law. Look, you can get a divorce. Look at this. But then they also have a nod towards traditional morality. But you wouldn't do it if you were a good person. You would not get the divorce. So the first one, here's my sleazebag lawyer. The reason he interferes in don't change your husband, he interferes, he helps to break up a marriage because somebody wants to go out with the wife, the young wife. And the reason is money. He helps by money. It's money. But he breaks, look at this. Look at this young man. There's the husband crying. Oh, he cries for days. It's terrible. His heart is broken because of this terrible thing. They get back together. It all works out. It's only one film I can think of in which the divorce goes through, and that's it. And the woman basically says, well, thank goodness, because it doesn't happen. In a movie made at just about the same time as Long Live the Missus, this film tells a story of two couples. They're all friends during college. They're college friends, and they get married. And one couple is very happy. There's no divorce there. The other couple, the wife does not want to stay home and keep house. She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to cook. She doesn't want to bring her husband his slippers. So that's not the wedding he had, the marriage he had in mind. So here they are arguing about what she's doing. And he says, okay, let's see the lawyer tonight, if that's the way you feel. And she says, why wait until, we'll see him tomorrow. Why wait until tomorrow? Let's see him now. And they get the divorce, but true to the values, she regrets it. And they go back together, and I believe live happily ever after. So this is how they end. They don't stay divorced, or they don't get the divorce, except in one or two cases where they're very bad people, bad women, I should say, who shouldn't do that. Well, that's just about the end of my slides. Let me look. Naturally, there's so much more to say, but I'd like to see if y'all have any reaction. Yes. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
In mainland China today, does the prosecutor still sit with the judge on the bench?
He does not. He does not. This is Republic of China procedure only. So in 1949, all the system that's being set up and you see in these movies was totally ended. That was thrown out. So, and in many cases, they were very, their trials, I use the term loosely, were very informal, much more informal, except for a brief period in the 1950s. Before the anti-rightist movement, before the Cultural Revolution. So the trials that we see in the movies from 1949 and earlier, that is a much more formal system, indirectly or directly based on European systems. So, and they did have formal, and they did. But of course, you get a message. If the prosecutor sits with the judge, you get a message, don't you? But often in China, they didn't have a prosecutor. And anyway, they wouldn't try you unless you were guilty. So they weren't trying to determine your guilt. So this is gone. This moved to Taiwan. And what you see now in Taiwan is an evolution and development of what was set up before 1949, including there's new lawyer law, a number of things in the civil code a number of laws have been amended, and it's changed.
Thank you, Allison. What is the role of a divorced woman in China? What is her status?
Well, you know, it's certainly during this period, it wasn't great because ideally you would not get divorced. If you're a good woman, you would not get divorced. And many of these, in some ways, I could say they're right given social mores. It doesn't mean that people approved of it. In traditional Chinese law, when a woman marries, she leaves her family. I wouldn't assume her family would take her back either. She leaves her family and she joins her husband's family. And her tablet will be on the ancestral shrine of her husband's family. She now belongs to that family, and any children she has belong to that family. They don't belong to her, and they don't belong to her parents' family. Now, traditionally, if you came from a very, very wealthy or powerful family and you were very unhappy, your family might show up and let your let your husband and other family know they needed to shape up. But they wouldn't necessarily welcome her home. If you get married, you stay married. And that was disapproved. Now, later people did get divorced. They did take advantage of it, and they certainly can in Taiwan. I mean, the divorce, now you have to register all of these, but basically the same law is in place. Now, after 1949, when the communists were in power, initially they allowed women to get divorced because traditional marriages were all arranged. These are not love matches. They're all arranged. So many women, you know, they were in arranged marriages with men they hated, or, you know, they had never seen before they got married. They never saw them. So there was a period when it was easy to get a divorce. The idea being you suffered under this horrible earlier system and now you should be freed. But once that period was over, the idea is you get married, your choice, you stay married. And for a long time, it was very, very difficult to get a divorce. Decades, it was very difficult. So it would be unusual, would have been unusual in the mainland after that period anyway, very difficult. It's not for women. China is still, you know, a very patriarchal society, and it certainly was under Mao Zedong, who was no friend of women's rights.
Okay.
Yes.
I kind of looked at the films that you've shown in a political perspective, looking for signs of the CP or the Communist Party having some influence. And I was pleased to see that there's not a lot of overt kind of relationship about succeeding to a party law. This is pretty common stuff, the woman and so forth. And I did, though, see that there's an old saying in China that women hold up half the sky, which was a liberating term beginning in 49.
Right.
And taking flower ever since. So did you see the melling of that idea of women being more important in this process after 49 under the CP than during the Republic?
I don't. I have two comments. It's a very interesting question. The first is the movies that I just showed you slides from are not leftist pro-communist movies. And there are many, and you see them, there's no doubt that they're criticizing, and it can be really savage criticism. I don't think that women holding up half the sky, in my personal view, as the Chinese say, in my personal view, is a slogan that has basically no meaning. And if you want to look and see, for example, today, if you want to look and see, I would look at the Politburo, the political bureau of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. That's the highest center, 24 men. There are no women in the Politburo, and therefore there are no women on the Standing Committee of the Politburo. If women had power, they would show up in positions like that. If they had real power, that's where the real power is. Now, they certainly don't live the same lives. They didn't lead the same lives in China after 1912 and after many of the new civil law provisions went into effect. And certainly in China, there have been advances. But I think that I don't see, and women have done a lot of things that they could not do earlier. But if you look at the one-child policy, if you look at how women were treated, that's not the treatment of people who are totally equal and have equal access to power. They don't. Now, that's my personal view. It's still a highly patriarchal system. And not everybody agrees with me, especially if you work for the Communist Party. But even if you don't, it's my view. It's a slogan that is repeated all the time. It's a noble idea that women should have the equal position and some choice in their lives, but I can't see that the Communist Party has really ultimately given it to them. And the one-child policy just destroyed the lives of many people. So it's not looking out for women. It's looking out for party policy, and they don't sit on the really important places where you have power.
All right, we have Lynn Holt, if you'd like to unmute.
Thank you. That was a really good talk. Really enjoyed it. Quick question. One observation I had about that first, the film where you showed the divorce, and they both both the husband and wife went to the lawyer.
Yes.
Has that practice evolved over time? So it struck me that there could be potential for conflict of interest since one lawyer is dealing with, a husband's and wife's perspectives there.
It is. It's a good question. And I think they weren't initially so concerned about conflict of interest, but it certainly could be in any non-consensual divorce. People would go to court and they would each have a lawyer of their own, which they could have done before 1949. I think one reason they don't do it here is they didn't want to film a court scene or anything else, and the parties had agreed. The filmmakers also show you, although this is not, if you believe in no conflict of interest, this doesn't save you from that. They really show you very clearly how Lawyer Yang looks at each one to see what they really want. And he realizes actually neither of them wants to get married. He's trying to act for both of them. They're both his friends, but that's a tough position to be in real life. I agree with you. If there's any question at all. The other reason it would be an issue is that ordinarily in an agreement like that, the property would be divided or there would be provision for the wife's support. So there would also be property issues where even if you both wanted a divorce, it's hard sometimes to represent both people. We can do it too, but we have to be very, very careful. So I think it's an issue. I agree.
Julianne, are there more questions online? I think I've got two more questions from the audience.
Just to change the topic a little bit, the actresses, and I guess the actors, were they well known in China? Were they stars the way our women actresses were in the 30s and 40s?
Great question, and thank you. Since I failed to say this, the star of Goddess was Ran Ling Yu, who was one of the greatest stars of the 1930s. People were wild for her. She led a very tragic life. She starred in a lot of movies. I think this is her best, but she was in quite a few. She was well known in Shanghai. She had tremendous popularity. But the year after she made this film, she committed suicide. And her funeral drew thousands and thousands and thousands, I don't know, 10,000s of people in Shanghai. It was a huge thing. So many of them were big stars and well-known all over. People in Shanghai liked movies. They went to the movies. They knew the stars. And she was a very big star and one of the greatest. She really is one of the greatest. And this, I think, is her best performance. And one of the best, the ones that people most liked, sad as the film is. She's often in a very sad film. But yes, they were well known. They were written up in the newspapers. Now they were competing, the movies and the stars were competing with Hollywood because Hollywood movies were also shown, many, many during this period. And a lot of people in Shanghai went to see them. So they were competing not only with other movies in Shanghai made in China, they were competing with Hollywood films. And Ran Ling Yu, though, was, by far the most popular, I think, and could compete with any Hollywood star. And they were written up in the newspapers. The gossip about her was terrible, but they were all written up. You could read reviews of Hollywood films and you read reviews of the big Shanghai films, but she had a huge following. Thank you. That's right. It's very important. Some of them were not so well known, but a number of them really were and had tremendous fan base and still do. even
Did
law.
did concubines have any rights?
Oh, excellent question. The, under traditional law, concubines clearly had rights. And they were recognized under traditional family law. In Hong Kong, as an aside, in Hong Kong, the law was changed in China in 1931, the marriage, divorce, et cetera law, but not in Hong Kong for Chinese people. So in Singapore and Hong Kong in Hong Kong until the early 1970s, traditional Chinese law was applied to family matters if you were Chinese. So I have a number of friends who are the children of concubines because they were born long before the 1970s, and they were all legitimate. So under traditional law, you could have only one wife. So that's the tai. We see the wife there. There's only one wife. But a man could have, especially if he had no sons, a man could have, this would be a good reason, as many concubines as he could afford and would agree to marry him. So, but they are not the wife. The wife still controls. If the concubine has a child, the wife may take the child and raise it. So it's a difficult position. But you could have really, if you could afford it, you could have any number. And she had a right to be recognized in the household. But when they were drafting the new family law, the civil code, concubines were a very difficult problem to deal with because you couldn't just throw them out. Some of them had been married, lived in the family for decades, had children there. You couldn't just say you have no status. On the other hand, in a modern law, you recognize only one husband and one wife. This is totally different from traditional family law. So what to do with a concubine? You can't throw her out in the street. So they tended to give her a kind of in-between status. She's still a family member, but she's not a wife necessarily. That's not a recipe for good relations. However, they gave her some status, but going forward, no more marriage to concubines. So after 1931, you could not, if a husband was tired of his wife or didn't have a son, he could not take a concubine and have her officially recognized as a secondary wife. So that's actually the law changed. The 1931 law changed that. Now, when the wife in Long Live the Missus, when the missus wants to get rid of his mistress, who officially cannot be a concubine at this time because not recognized if you start the relationship, but she goes to the mistress and talks as if the mistress is really a concubine and says to her, "We would welcome you to live with us. Come and live with us. I could use your help so much. I'd really like," in other words, now she wants the mistress to go and she's going to boss her around because she's the wife. Of course, the mistress doesn't buy that. And you couldn't officially have a concubine. If she started after this date, she has no position. It's just an affair or someone else, but she has no official position in the family. But that was a very hard, what are you gonna do, throw these people out on the street? You couldn't do it. But of course, many wives would have liked to do it. No, it's very tough. It's very tough. So that also was in the law. No formal recognition of concubines.
One more question, and then you can catch Allison afterwards and chat with her.
Great questions.
I want to raise another member of the so-called broader family. And, during these relationships, a female might become acquainted with a male that's already married, and they develop a relationship of some length, either from being like a concubine, but being a mistress.
Right.
Was there any movement down that line to give mistresses rights during this particular divorce or other particular, or are they just excluded from the process? One sub-question. I'm more concerned about being in the family book, namely becoming a woman entering in some relationship, becoming a member of the Yang family because she has had to give up her family to join his in the process. And so she becomes the legal woman in this particular marriage. So kind of comments on those two questions I'd appreciate.
Thank you. I don't know of any, after 1931, there's no recognition of new concubines. There are no secondary wives. There are only wives. And only those who married before under the previous law, which is all traditional law, can claim that status. Concubine could be on the family tables, genealogy charts, and worship. That's the only place she had. You know, she doesn't have it. But after that, you're a mistress. And that's it. You don't have a formal position. You've got to be married. And there are no more secondary wives. So you can only be a first wife. You could be a mistress and be supported, but you can't, even though the missus tries to say, yes, you'll be a concubine. I can't wait for you to wait on me. Yeah, wives have the power. There is no such status. It's gone as of 1931. Now, in some cases, people wanted to live, they wanted to live by earlier law, but it was not recognized. Once the 1931 Civil Code was adopted, that's it. And it doesn't mean that men gave up mistresses or they didn't want someone else to play with, but they could only have one wife and they could have no official concubines who appeared on the family. They will not appear anymore on the family charts. That's it. Well, I leave it to I'm happy to follow up after on any questions.
Thank you, Allison, for a wonderful explication of two very different films. I think you've cast a lot of insight on how we can understand the pre-1949 Chinese society. Thank you.